All right. All right. Welcome back, everybody. We are here for the 6-month status report from the Office of the Inspector General. And Inspector General John Carey is here to present that. Let's do that. Madam Clerk, please.
State Attorney Ehrenberg. Here. Commissioner Cruz.
Here.
Public Defender Howard. Commissioner Kreidel. Chair Kugler.
Here.
Commissioner Romano. Vice Chair Sharif.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Inspector General, Mr. Carey.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for your time here. We barely have a quorum here, so I'm glad we have enough here to have a quorum. I'm going to ask for time-wise, our state attorney has some other appointments and you're busy. I'm going to abbreviate some of my presentation today. Some of the information you've had before, when we get to it, we'll talk about that.
Okay. All right. I apologize, Inspector Carey. I neglected to seek approval of the minutes from the November 3rd, 2022 meeting.
Move approval.
Moved by Commissioner Cruz,
Second.
second by Vice Chair Sharif. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. I yield the floor again.
Okay, great. So let's get into our briefing on things we've done over the last 6 months. And again, just for our attendees, again, this is what we do, and we've talked about that during the break while you were out. Again, that we promote integrity, efficiency, and effectiveness in government in order to enhance public trust. And we talked earlier while you were out about the audits, investigations, contract oversight, and reviews that we do as an office. And again, it's just another way to present it. Two sides of a coin. We root out the bad on one side of the coin in preventing, detecting, investigating fraud, waste, and abuse, and we promote the good in doing our audits and oversight to promote efficiency and effectiveness in government to ensure good government. This is just another way to look at our office. From the monitoring side, we're going to talk about the teaching and training, of which we're really trying to move into in our strategic plan to get out and about more and more on our outreach. And that's that preventative side of, it's always better to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse, prevent things from going bad in government than investigating it. So teaching and training, outlooks, reviews, and then investigations. But I always want to say you're going to hear a lot about our audits, our reviews, our investigations, but I do want to recognize special recognition that undergirding foundation that we have for the office. Barbara Bellafiore, right here, that is our contact with you, that she's really helps us run as an office, our administrative, logistics, personnel, budget, so many things she does behind the scenes that nobody sees. And then Jeff Whaley, our IT guru, I like to call him IT everything, 24 years experience in the IT field in government that he has, and he's brought that to us. And he not only does our IT and our social media, he does so much more in the office. He's a quality control, one of our last quality control checks on detail to make sure we get things right. And then, of course, Calinthia Dillard, our deputy and general counsel, who everything that gets to me goes through her. She's that final control and is the smartest person in the room, usually gets things right for us. Okay, here's what we're going to look at today. And what I'm going to ask, if we've gone over before our terminology, and that was, I did that mainly for our audience. And if I can pass over that, we'll get to some other things. So let's pass through but I do we'll show I always like to show the commercials. There's a difference between, if you have a mouse in your office, it's important to have your technical terminology right to know what type of mouse. And so we have technical terminology just like many other professional fields. Question cost, potential cost savings. These are terms that you're familiar with that we've gone over before. Now, I want to just say congratulations and thanks. We've got a couple new folks here on board. We've got Sonia McNair and Lisa Inkle back here. Our new folks have joined this last 6 months in the office in the contract oversight team. So we've got a couple new folks aboard ready to help us out. We're so glad to have them. We've had some folks that have become certified Inspector General investigators in the last 6 months. Kendra Lester, Tiffany Thomas, and TC. I don't know if any of those are here. Kendra, there she is back there. Kendra just came on board last year, and boy, she is doing great things for us already as an investigator. And then local leaders that we have. We've got in our office, we've got a lot of local leaders in local chapters. Chris Dykman, Chris, right here, is on the board of our local chapter of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. Hillary Bojan, back here, she is on the board of the, International Institute of Auditors, the local chapter. Did I say that right? The Institute of Internal Auditors. And Tiffany Thomas, who, is Tiffany here? Tiffany's not here. She just got off, but she was on the board of the local chapter of the National Institute of Government Purchasing Organization. So we've got local leaders here in our office. And then our big local leaders, Calentia, and just within the past few weeks here that she's been recognized, this past month, within the Cherie Davis Cunningham Black Women's Lawyer Association and Malcolm F. Cunningham Senior Bar Association as a legal trailblazer, recognized in May. She received the Emerald Award from the Girl Scouts of Southeast Florida, and Calentia was a past, not too long ago in her life, Girl Scout. And that is a special award that, again, very prestigious award for leaders in the community who are also role models for other young women. And then this just came out recently too, that she's being recognized as a woman of impact on the International Career and Business Alliance, and that ceremony will be within the next few weeks down in Broward County. I know where the ceremony will be. Okay, let's go into our operations. This was our intake activities, and our intake division is headed up by Evangeline Rentz, that I've talked about before, that everything comes through Angie, that they come in the office, and these are all of our complaints of wrongdoing that's come in this 6 months compared to last 6 months, and then what happened to them once they came in. They turn into either investigations, referrals. That's for Angie's side. And then they go over to the investigative side. So here's what we're doing. Still very busy with a lot of investigations going on for our small staff of 7 investigators. Everybody has had plenty of work to do. A number of referrals to law enforcement. In the last 6 months, we just double-checked their numbers. Those last 6 months are mainly the COVID cases that we have of a number of people, unfortunately, that we found have falsified information. That Stu will be talking about some of these investigations of for rental assistance. They either falsified that my employee, you have to receive that money, you're supposed to get that by either losing your job or reduced hours due to COVID. People falsify those documents, or you can't pay your rent and you have to get a note from your landlord. People are falsifying those documents, and then small business grants. A lot of those are all referred to law enforcement. And in fact, I just learned recently that we've had our first arrest on one of these cases, fortunately. So the sheriff's department has made an arrest, and I think there'll be more arrests coming. It takes, as you probably, all of you know, once you turn it over to law enforcement, it starts the clock again many times, and we're working closely with them. We're working closely with federal law enforcement on a number of these cases. So eventually, I think you'll be seeing more arrests to come on these. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Stu and let him talk about some of the actual cases that we have worked. Yes, do it in summary if you could.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. It's my pleasure to speak with you this afternoon about some of the fantastic work that our investigative staff has done. I'm going to summarize the 6 full reports that we did during the last 6 months into the various categories they occurred in. Right now, we are still awash in allegations of taxpayers' money that was supposed to go for CARES Act COVID assistance, both to small businesses and for rental assistance, that instead people committed fraud and tried to submit falsified documents or lie about their qualification status. Not only is it a proactive fraud on the coffers of the county, but when that money goes out to undeserving businesses or people, that's money that doesn't go to the businesses and people that need it. So Inspector General Carey frequently talks about the preventative effect. Every time we do one of these investigations, we put it into the media, we put it on our website, we put it out into the public, and we are invested in the kind of outreach that spreads the word through the county that this money is needed for the people that need it and that there will be repercussions for those that try to submit fraudulent paperwork to receive that money. So there's 6 investigations that were completed during this 6-month period. 2 of them centered on Restart Business Grant, county money administered by the Department of Housing and Economic Development for the county. In both of those situations, business grant applicants applied for the maximum of $25,000 small business grant, and you're supposed to disclose the money you've already received from other grant programs. And in both cases, businesses did not. We proved it. The 2 investigators were Lizette McGowan and Chelsea Martin that led those investigations. And during both of those investigations, at the end of the investigation, they were referred to law enforcement. And in both of those investigations, we received full recoupment to the county coffers in advance of law enforcement making a decision as to whether to pursue. The second category of the investigations we've done, there's 4 of these, were on rental assistance fraud. They were led by 2 of them by Kendra Lester, 1 by Lizette McGowan, and 1 by Cynthia Suriel. And those investigations were a host of types of fraudulent applications, including one person who was a city employee for the city of Delray Beach, forged city letterhead to say that he had been laid off or had his hours reduced from the city during COVID. And when we interviewed the city, we found that not only was the letterhead and the letter forged, but that the city took special efforts to make sure that their employees were not laid off during the COVID crisis. There were 2 private business employees that forged letters from their employers. One person forged rental assistance documents by concurrently submitting 2 applications with different email addresses and different social security numbers for the same rent for the same place that that person lived. Coincidentally enough, the landlord for that person was the applicant's mother. So the mother got paid twice. The landlord gets paid under these. These are 5 of our 6 investigations were referred to law enforcement. A whole host of other investigations have been referred to law enforcement. During the past 6 months, we identified $50,000 approximately of costs. We received about $45,000 of recoupments, and that number isn't to the penny because a lot of the people that are recouping costs to the taxpayers are on payment plans. So we don't have a day-to-day total, but that's the approximate amount. Since we've been looking at these fraud cases since March of 2020, we've received about $200,000 of recoupments back to the county on behalf of people that we've directly investigated. And the last thing I'll leave you with is we have not lost sight of the other types of investigations we do. Those are, in addition to more COVID investigations, which will continue to come, we have other investigations of waste, fraud, and abuse in government that you'll be seeing soon. And we've turned our focus for these investigations to larger conspiracies. So we have multiple investigations right now that try to get at the people or organizations that help vast numbers of people to create false documents, document mills, if you will. So we're working on some of those conspiracies. We're working with both federal and local law enforcement, which will be in concert with the U.S. Attorney's Office and State Attorney's Office.
Thank you, Stu.
Thank you.
Again, for the record, for the notes, that was Stuart Robinson, the Director of Investigations. Stu has been with us, just a great person, great investigator, retired FBI supervisor, been involved in major cases that he's worked. He's instructed around the world for investigations and how to interview. So, I mean, he's a real catch, and I appreciate Stu sticking with us here. So those are the cases that Stu summarized those for times. But this time I want to talk just a little bit about, we had mentioned that, let me catch up on my notes here, that our reports, once we do them and then we turn them over to law enforcement or other agencies, then oftentimes it starts the clock again. So a lot of actions take place after the fact. And I'm going to give you just a couple of examples of things that have happened after the fact as a result or related to our cases. If you remember this was a case we reported that the report went out in June of 2020. And this was where a city manager was using the government purchase card. He was going on to his college reunions on the government dime and using that credit card, the government card, for a number of things that obviously not authorized. And so at the time, he paid back the money that we identified as, this is wrong, you spent this wrong, and also he resigned at the time. Well, we referred him to law enforcement and the State Commission on Ethics. Our local Commission on Ethics at the time, as I understand, I think some of those things that had happened was past your time that you could look into it. But the state has a longer period of time where they can look into things. So we turned that over to the State Ethics Commission. Here a couple years later, they finished, during this reporting period, they finished their investigations and found that, yes, he misused his position, and they recommended to the governor that he receive a letter of reprimand and a civil penalty of $4,500. So things happen once we turn them over. Now, another case you might remember, in 2021, our report came out in May on the water problems down in Delray Beach. And the allegation came in that there was a cover-up, basically, that some folks in the government have found that that they had problems with the water, and they did not report that as required to the Florida Department of Health. And in fact, the allegations were also that one of the persons that they were alleging was the mayor, and the city manager knew about this and didn't report that to the citizens or to the Department of Health. Well, we found out, and here's some good things we do. Sometimes we clear people's names also, that it had not gone up to the mayor and the city manager. The information did not go into. There was a mid-level city manager that was notified that one of the inspectors that had notified them that somebody had reported that they believed they got sick from the water, and the mid-level manager, it stopped right there and didn't go into the report. So that was the results of our investigations. But here, a couple years later, just recently, I'm sure you've probably seen, it's been in many different media outlets, that unfortunately the whistleblower, they made an agreement with the city for over $800,000 of whistleblower reprisal. And in addition to that, the U.S. Department of Labor, Occupation and Safety and Health Administration did determine that the city illegally harassed the terminated whistleblower for bringing forward the information. So things happen after the fact. And we offer whistleblower training to the cities, to the government. And again, if anybody's out there listening, we encourage you, we'd love to come and give some training about whistleblower, what our Florida whistleblower law is about, and to help everybody understand what responsibilities and how to, again, keep yourself out of trouble in that regard. Now our Contract Oversight Division, headed up by Tony Montero. And this is what we've done this month, or this 6 months compared to last 6 months. Put out a report, but I'll talk about a number of the other things they've done rather than that one report that you're going to see. And I'm going to turn it over to Tony to talk about the report that his division did. So Tony Montero.
Good afternoon, Tony Montero, Director of Contract Oversight and Evaluations. This was an interesting report. It really captures the true spirit of contract oversight and some of the things that we do, the span that it takes. Tiffany Thomas was the lead behind this, and she's not here today, but fantastic field work that she did on this. It started out as a simple inspection with limited objectives, and from John's first slide where he showed the scale of what we do. Tiffany, you remember, was the one who did the landscaping, the plants, and some really clever things she does. Well, this was to check on the renovation of the town library. It was built in 1921. They were doing a major renovation. The contract was about $800,000. And it was just limited objectives. So she was going to go out to the job site and verify, is the contractor doing the job that they were paid for, and is the town administering the contract the way that they should be? Well, this is the observer effect. Once you start looking at something, things tend to change. So as she was looking, she started finding things that didn't add up, like the E-Verify provision, the E-Verify law wasn't being complied with. So that led her to do a deeper document search. While she's doing that and investigating, they put a stop work order on the facility, and they had some questions about the vendor, and they ran into an issue with the HVAC system. Then we started questioning, well, about licenses, is the contractor licensed to do HVAC? It was on hold, and they were working on a change order to change vendors. It's kind of strange. And the more we dug into it, the deeper it got. This was over the Christmas holiday, and basically there was a communications shutdown with everybody until finally about January, when the contractor himself called us up and said he's no longer working the job. As it turns out, during that time period, one of the commissioners who previously worked on that building on HVAC went out to the job site with the staff, and he noticed that there were some inconsistencies with this contractor. He didn't have his license number posted. There were some questions about the work that needed to be done because this particular council member had put in the HVAC system, 20 years earlier. So they started doing some digging, and he discovered that the insurance certificate was forged. And that led to a call to the insurance company. The insurance company verified that. They contacted, the insurance agent contacted DFS. DFS, the Insurance Fraud Division, Financial Services, came out, and they investigated. There was a previous warrant out for the vendor on a job down in Broward, and he wound up getting arrested. But from that point forward, the town really worked with us. It was a nice feeling that they took to heart what we had uncovered. Their lapse in procedures, their lapse in documenting, the lapse in vetting the contractor, determining responsibility. The bond was even missing for a while there. It wasn't until our report was ready to be published that they discovered the bond was missing. So they had procedures, they weren't really following them, and then they really needed to put in new procedures to get those best practices down. And the town was very, very accommodating with that. We worked well together, and it was a good team effort to try and set them back on the right path. And in a town where they're spread very, very thin, it's very easy for one or two people to have a lapse in performance that affects everything down the line. But we were very fortunate. They finally awarded the contract, or re-awarded the contract, to the second lowest bidder, and they finished the job on time and on budget, so everything worked out for a happy ending.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tony, but that's just an example of here we started out with a review, and you start looking into things and where it could end up. And Tony and his team, Tony's a great leader for the team with his background. He's years and years in contracting and procurement from the federal government all the way back. He's an Air Force Academy graduate, time in the service, and he's then got out as a contractor. He worked for a number of years at FAU in contracting there and the leadership there portion, and we're just so happy to have Tony here with us. Just again, and a lot of things, again, you don't see what his office does that I always like to talk about. Like currently, right now, they're doing 9 inquiries, basically some complaints that have come in that are related to procurement, that whenever an investigation or a complaint comes in that's procurement related, instead of the investigative side doing it, Tony and his side, that they are experts in this procurement, and they've also been to the schools, the certification schools, to do the investigation. So they're doing investigative type of work on contracts all the time. Here's just some examples of some of the things they've done jumping out and about. We were at Palm Beach Gardens. They hosted a how to do business with local government, invited a number of vendors in, a number of folks who were in there. Again, Tony set up a table out there, spoke to a lot of folks, again, proactively speaking to vendors and other folks about how to do business, how do you do this right coming in, so we're not investigating them after the fact. So he was out there. In fact, this just shows Palm Beach Gardens. I'd like to give a shout out to them of where we've come. When I first came here, we didn't have a great relationship, particularly. There's some cities we have real good and some not so good. Palm Beach Gardens, over the years, we've come to be very good partners with them in procurement integrity, and they're leaders within the county. Palm Beach Gardens is one of the leaders of leading other cities, of training, of how to do best practices. They recently won a national award for procurement, and we've come from a not so great relationship to them inviting us out. And in fact, they invited me out. You can't read the small print, but I was the guest speaker. I thought, wow, here's where we've come over the years. We put out the Red Flags card. You have copies on your desk. We recently developed those from his office. Most of it, again, you get from somebody else and put your logos on it from other government agencies, but we put, as part of our training, out there. And you might note right in the center the hand puppet of the cow. I have to say that this is part of Tony's unique and innovative training techniques that he's used in-house to train our office. So for all of us are better in contracting and procurement sides, and so he's used contract cow to start training us. And I don't know, we're kind of modeled that we may be using it out and about.
Next report, I'd like to see the contract cow.
We talked about that. So just some other things. See, these are things that are off the record that, again, you don't see from reports. There was a complaint of in the PACE program that somebody had hurricane windows put in improperly, or they didn't do all the work, and they had to pay, and they did their pay. Tony, his team followed up on that. We farmed that out in what's called a management inquiry, where we basically turn it down to the county. They look at it, but we still provide oversight. They provide it back to us, and then we review if that makes the passes mustard. And we found out, the PACE provider did not complete some work, but in the process of the inquiry, they did complete the project. They passed the code. They corrected all of the tax roll, and they compensated the homeowner for the taxes paid. That's, again, it came through our office, and we provided that. His office oversees, there's meetings. We go to meetings all around the county, and we monitor all these procurement. Just during this 6 month, $749 million of contract businesses from the counties and the cities going on, that his office goes to selection meetings, provides oversight of different procurement activities that are going on, that is in that monitoring side to make sure that we're on track. He's got still got a couple projects going on that is CARES COVID Act related monitoring. Okay, now let's talk about audits. And that's Hillary Beaujean, who will be up here in a minute to talk about her audits. And Hillary, I got to brag on her. Hillary is a CPA. She is just a smart person and a great leader, doing such a good job in training our audit staff and overseeing our audit staff. That again, just a fantastic job. And I'm so fortunate to have Hillary on the team that she's sticking around with us. So this is some of our activities. I'm going to talk about, if you notice, usually we have a very high percentage of our recommendations made and that are accepted by management. Well, this time we didn't. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on, why we didn't have some of the recommendations accepted this time. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Hillary to let her talk about her cases.
Good afternoon. Hillary Beaujean, Director of Audit. So this first audit was of a contract between the county and the Urban League of Palm Beach County. It was conducted by Jennifer Timms. She's here today. The Urban League is a youth-serving agency that the county partnered with on a program to reduce and prevent youth offenders with current sanctions from reoffending. Our audit focused on the management of the contract, related invoicing and payment activities, as well as contractual requirements and deliverables. So we had two findings. The first was that we found the county paid the Urban League for units of service that were not within the contract terms and scope of work, or that they lacked sufficient documentation. The county paid the agency in units of service, which was considered an hour of staff time. The majority of hours in question were not within the contract terms and scope, because the contract language was not sufficient to include the work related to potential program participants that were referred to the agency. This resulted in identified costs of over $88,000. The second finding was that the county paid the Urban League for payment requests that lacked original and properly signed cover memos, which was required by the contract. The cover memos were a control to help ensure that the agency's payment requests were true and accurate and not funded by another agency or government funding. The contract required that the CEO or designee sign the cover memos. However, the county accepted cover memos signed by the agency's vice president, who had never been designated by the CEO. This finding resulted in the majority of question costs of over $57,000 for non-compliance with the contract. Okay, so the next audit was of the City of Boca Raton's accounts payable process, and this audit was performed by Chanel Brathwaite. She's not here today. We found the city had generally adequate controls over the process. However, we did find instances of non-compliance with the city's purchasing card policy. We found instances where different employees in the same department or division had split purchases on their purchasing card to circumvent the dollar threshold on individual purchases. This resulted in question costs of over $10,000. We also found that some of the purchasing card transactions that we tested lacked the required sales receipt or gift card documentation. Those instances resulted in approximately $6,700 in question costs. And then the next project is our IT network security review of the town of Highland Beach. And it was performed by our auditor, Hank Nagel. He's also not here today. Our IT network security reviews are non-technical, compliance-based reviews where we look for basic network security controls to help ensure that IT assets are safeguarded, as well as data for the entity. We found the town had processes in place designed to prevent intrusion and breaches, as well as detect and respond to security threats. However, we did find some areas where the town's written guidance was not sufficient, specifically with respect to data and asset disposals, organizational cybersecurity processes, including incident response and contingency and recovery processes, as well as access control management. In addition to updating the written guidance, we recommended that training be provided to personnel on the updated policies to ensure that everyone knows their roles and responsibilities over those processes. So if there's no questions, I'll turn it back over to John.
Mr. Chair, were either of these two IT, I'm trying to remember, I thought it was related to technology, that there was some municipality that was not complying with your request for information?
Yes, there was. There was the City of Atlantis, and John was going to cover that one next.
Okay, all right.
Thank you very much, Hillary.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Hillary. And I know Hillary doesn't look it. I mean, she looks very young, but she's got experience. I know she's been in the healthcare district. She's been was it Tampa, or which large city was it that you were the auditor there? Orange County, yeah. So, I mean, she's got a lot of experience and a lot of education and certifications, and again, just a good person and a good leader. So, again, so happy to have her. Okay, but we are going to talk about, this was unique, I should say. It's, we issue subpoenas. It's not, often we issue subpoenas often for bank records in our investigations and regarding investigations. This is, with this audit, is the first time, not only in the 9 years I'm here, but that I know the entire office, that we had to issue subpoenas to a city regarding an audit. And this was an IT audit for the city of Atlantis, and it was a basic routine IT audit that Hillary talked about. We went in and they gave us several reasons why they thought we shouldn't do the audit. One of them was they just had paid the reasons that they gave us was they paid a contractor. They admitted that before they had some problems with their IT structure and systems, and they paid a contractor thousands of dollars. And they said the IT contractor told them everything was good. And I told them, well, I hope they would tell you it's good. You paid them thousands of dollars. We're an objective, independent organization to do that. They then stated they had 4 different audits, and this was going to be duplicative of the other audits. Well, when we found out under subpoena and oath, there was one audit that we knew about that they did, was a law enforcement audit of a very specific portion of their organization, and the other 3 were not audits. They were not audits. They question, how can you really do this because you're not IT specialists? Well, again, we are specialists in auditing, and we have, all of our auditors have training. They're certified auditors that have certified training in IT audits at our Inspector General Institute, so they have special training. We've had hundreds of hours of training in IT auditing. We have Jeff Whaley here, who's got hundreds of hours, 24 years, right? Jeff is an IT specialist that helped conduct audits at the state level. I myself, I have to brag a little bit here, but there's this thing called the Joint Worldwide Intelligence Communication Network that my former agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, runs, that holds our highest level of communication for the government. Runs it for defense intelligence, for not only defense, but all of our other intelligence agencies run on this network. I conducted security IT reviews for that for a number of years before I came down here. So we do have the expertise to do these. They involve money. Another question, well, don't you just look at money things? I said, no, we look at all types of operations for the county and the cities. That's in our charter, to look at operations for efficiency and effectiveness. But even I said, let's argue the money aspect. The cities, we had 3 cities that we know of in Palm Beach County that have been attacked, ransomware attacks. That's just that we know of. Now there's a state law that you have to notify the state if you're come under ransomware attack. Before, you didn't have to. So, but now they have to. So we know of at least 3. If you come under ransomware attack, this is money. this is not only big money that you're jeopardizing the financial information of the citizens who you have their data. You're jeopardizing not only the money and their financial data, but it also costs money to get all of that back online. Thousands and thousands of dollars. And national surveys show that the majority or a large number of attacks, of ransomware attacks, are on smaller local government agencies. So it's a high-risk vulnerability, and so we got a lot of business doing there. So bottom line, we had some challenges to do this audit, but again, we're going to do our work one way or the other. So we issued subpoenas, and we received the information. We interviewed city manager and their IT consultant under oath to get the information that we needed to conduct the audit, and provided them recommendations. The city still refused to, and they told us that they refused to respond to the report, and so our recommendations we made to them to help them become more secure and help their citizens' information, we did not receive a response. So what we may have to do to follow up on that, we'll either do another audit to see if they've taken any of those recommendations next year, within the next year or so, or we may have to contact the state auditor general, who would help us to make sure the city's doing what they need to do. But that's a case where we're going to do our job one way or the other, and get what we need to get done.
Just give us 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr.
Sure.
Chair. Mr. General, tell me, do you do this for all the cities, these
Yes.
evaluations?
We're doing these, we're going to be doing these IT audits. We just started this year. So it was a shock, like, well, wait a minute, you haven't done these before. So,
Right. It's
well,
really important, and I
Yes.
know, because I was familiar when Riviera Beach was the victim of this extortion. They had to pay a lot of money, and it encourages more of these cyber extortions. And all it takes is to educate people not to open up these links that they get, these phishing links, and that's what downloads this stuff onto their computers. So it's really important what you're doing. The FBI has been working, I know, with cities after they become victims, but no one that I know until now is working with them before they become victims. So thank you for what you do. This is really important.
In fact, I'm on one of the counties, there's a state IT task force that I'm on the task force with our state chief inspector general, with them working, and trying to develop ways. During the midst of this, I had the chief state CISO, the chief information security officer. I talked to him about this, and he was so excited that somebody at the local level are doing these. And, to work with him, I showed him our checklist, here's our plan, our audit plan. And he looked over our audit plan. I mean, he's excited that we're doing these. The state are excited we're doing these, and very supportive of what we're doing. Yes, sir.
Continue.
So that's what kind of the uniqueness of that audit. I hope we don't have many more like this, but if we do, again, I'm an old Marine, and we're gonna get the job done one way or the other. Now for training and outreach, again, been involved, this is some of the things we've done in the training outreach here. These are just examples of some of the things that we've done. We had Kendra, Angie, and Barbara. You can see them at the table there at the upper left. We had a table out at the employees. There was a county employee and recognition day where we had hundreds of county employees out. So we're getting tables out and about, more and more out and about with all of our information, just speaking to people. At the lower left, I was on the radio at the Talk of the Palm Beaches during the last 6 months. Again, I told you about out at the Palm Beach Gardens event they had. And then here, you might recognize a couple of these folks at the Nonprofits First. I was on a panel discussion out there with a couple of distinguished colleagues at Palm Beach at the Nonprofits First, talking about schemes and frauds and exploitation out there. I spoke during this time at FAU, so I spoke out there at their executive MBA program and presented class on ethics, ethics and leadership. So somebody asked me a question. I could talk for 2 hours on that. So I spoke out there before, and before I've spoken at Palm Beach Atlantic on the same subject there. And then in the center, Calenthy and I, as you know, I'm the chair for our National Institute for Training Inspector General Certification. Calenthy came out this last time and taught ethics to all the different courses to everybody who was out there. So she taught the ethics block to our investigators, auditors, evaluators, and the most senior IGs out there. She's taught out there this time. This next time, Stu's going to be teaching out there. Budget, standard budget. Originally, when the office stood up, 40, we're still at 27. Again, we like to say of all the citizens of Palm Beach County, our budget's about $3.5 million a year. That equals out to about $2.30 per citizen, which is about, a Big Mac is around $5, so I say it's about a half a Big Mac is what it costs the citizens per year to fund our office. Now plans, and we're winding down here, plans and where we're going to go. And I want to let Calenthy talk about this for a minute.
Good afternoon. I'm Calenthy Diller, the General Counsel and Deputy Inspector General, and I'm here to talk about every organization's favorite thing, strategic planning. So, our office actually recently embarked upon updating our 5-year strategic plan, covering the 2023 to 2028 period. So, in going through that process, it was critically important for us to take a look at our last 5-year plan and kind of evaluate our progress, determine, what we've achieved, assess where we are as an organization and the current environment, both internally and externally, and to do all of that in light of our mandate under the IG ordinance. We determined that under General Carey's leadership, we have accomplished many of those goals over the last 5 years. For example, we had a goal of recruiting, developing, and retaining a highly qualified and diverse workforce, and we think we've been very successful on that. So what's the next step? So how do we take that workforce and ensure that our office is not stagnant, but we continue to move in a positive direction to becoming a model IG office? And so instead of using a top-down approach, what we decided to do was to build from the bottom up and provide a committee where we had individuals from every division. So every division had, I think, 2 individuals who agreed or were voluntold to serve on that committee. And it was led by Ms. Evangeline Rentz, for several reasons, because of her leadership, skills, her organizational skills. We all trust her and love her, and she's the ultimate team player, and sometimes she can pull us to do things that we may not necessarily want to do. So the committee had multiple meetings. We evaluated where we were, and we came up with a new strategic plan. If you look at this slide, we massaged our mission a little bit, and having all the parties come together, they determined that, they thought we needed to make a few adjustments. So we did that because our goal was for everyone to have not only buy-in, but ownership in where we're going within the next 5 years. So we had some spirited discussions, a lot of meetings, and made some minor adjustments to the verbiage of our mission. But of course, in all that we do, we always focus on the goal of having independence and objective oversight, insight, and foresight. We made some minor revisions to the vision statement as well. And in addition to that, we looked at our values and we decided that the things we have listed here under the acronym PRIDE were exactly where we wanted to be, so that stayed consistent for the next strategic plan. So as we move forward, what we wanted to do was focus more on that outreach and that partnership with the community. So in order for us to have a successful office, we needed to use that inspired team to partner with the community to get that buy-in to possibly increase our tips. If people understand where our jurisdiction is, what we can do, and increase our tips, and also, once we make recommendations, people are more willing to accept it if they feel like they have an IG office. They know that we're here, that we listen, that we take their complaints and allegations seriously, and that we work with them for the betterment of our community. So if you look up here, you have our strategic goals. So the first one that we have here, deliver results that promote integrity, excellence, and accountability in government, is really kind of our overall role in government itself, kind of a big picture approach. The next one, strengthen relationships and build trust with external stakeholders. That's what I was talking about as far as our partnership, our outreach, our education with the community and with the members of the public. And that third one is more of our attempt to look introspectively at our own office. We go out and make recommendations for what other people can do to be effective and efficient. We do that within as well. So we always think about ways that we can improve what we do. We engage in a lot of training within our office. We actually have monthly training within the office where we talk about public records. We talk about, our PPMs. We talk about things that are important to improving how we serve the community. So everyone, I think, has a copy of the strategic plan. And if you have no questions, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Colinthia.
Okay, thank you, Colinthia. Again, smartest person always when I'm in the room. Again, here are things, just plans, again, just to focus a little bit more of that communication and outreach. Again, what we're doing, Stu has really worked, Stu and I have worked together on this outreach plan. We developed now a written outreach plan. We've really put so much effort in it that we're going to be training this. Stu developed a PowerPoint, and he's going to present a 2-hour block of instruction for our most senior level inspector generals across the country about identifying, basically everybody has, who are your stakeholders? Okay, for each stakeholder, whether it's the citizens, the employee, management, law enforcement, IG committee, okay, you need to write this down. It's like, okay, now that we've identified the stakeholders, what do we need to tell them? And what do we need for them to tell us to be successful? And you have to do this intentionally, and so it's that important that we've had this plan, but now we've more formalized it, and we're going to execute that. In fact, I think it's so important that I'm the chair of the Institute, that I think it's important for IGs across the country to give them some examples and focus on how do you communicate and do this outreach, and what are all the means, whether the different type of social medias, face-to-face, the different means of communication, and how do I communicate with each one of those stakeholders. So we're going to be working on that. Still looking at that 2% sales tax, even though the money's basically in over the next couple of years, now the construction starts building up a lot more than it has been. So we're going to be focused on that 2% sales tax oversight. Coronavirus, we're still looking at that. We hope it's going to wind down, but I have to say, I've got a quote that is interesting from an old colleague of mine. Let me see here. Michael Horowitz, who is the Inspector General for the Justice Department, and he's the head of the task force for oversight of the coronavirus, trying to get this money back. And what he stated here recently, he says that of the $5 trillion that we spent in pandemic relief, he said the amount siphoned off on fraud could be anywhere from tens of billions of dollars to over $100 billion. And it will be years before that we've got that number, and we're still working on this. So it would be years that now that money's gone out, that people are working, that finding still people who have unfortunately stolen that money from people who needed it. And I know our state attorney's got a task force now on that too, and I mean, there's plenty of business. We're going to be working on that. We've got a new hotline, which is, I've worked on this. I'm really excited about this hotline and getting it out because it's one everybody can remember, 877-OIG-TIPS. And so by getting that out, that's something that's out there. I'm working with Channel 20, going to be doing a public service announcement on that. We're doing ways we can get that number out and about to folks so they know. And again, 877 OIG tips. Everybody can remember that, and hopefully they'll call us if they suspect fraud, waste, abuse, or mismanagement in government. And then we've got later on in the year, we have our accreditation. Every 3 years, we're accredited by the state agency that does these accreditations for IGs and law enforcement agencies. It's critical. We've been accredited, so this is going to be a reaccreditation. And Chris Dykman is not only our manager for investigation, but he's our accreditation manager leading that effort. Okay, now we're wrapping it up. Just of what we've done to date, 13 years. Almost 13, now that's almost 1,000 calls a year we get. Calls and correspondence and people calling in for help about something they saw, something they need help on. Millions of dollars of those question costs, potential cost savings. Over 1,000 recommendations, 91% acceptance rate. Trying to share what's good, prevent the bad. 19 arrests. We've actually got 20. You'll see on the next one because that happened during past our reporting period. So now we've actually had 20. And again, I hope there's going to be more. And again, a lot of referrals to Law Enforcement Commission on Ethics. And that completes my presentation. Are there any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Inspector General. We appreciate it. Any comments or discussion?
Thank you, General Carey, for all you and your staff do. Very, very impressive.
Absolutely. All right. Are there any? Go ahead.
Now, General Carey, you guys are really impressive. You have an amazing team. I want to give special kudos to Barbara because I hear from her all the time. She is so active with the emails. There's no grass that grows under your feet. You just make things. Let us know everything. So thank you for your communication, for your accessibility, and for all your hard work.
Yes. Thank you so much. Great job, you guys.
Commissioner Sharif, again, congratulations, and I hope our paths cross again.
Yes, likewise. Thank you.
Are there any public comments? All right. I do not see any public comments. Is there any new business for the IG committee? Not hearing any. And, well, this concludes the June 8th Inspector General 6-month report, and we are adjourned. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.